Hello again. This is the explanation of the drawing that goes with the song, Commander of the Lord's Army. I think what I'm going to do is just mainly read what I have already written up for this picture. This drawing is the first in a series of 8 drawings that center around the progressive revelation of God to humanity. The Bible introduces things of God and progressively reveals more and more and more, up to the point of Christ actually becoming a man. And the word Jesus that I have behind here in these 8 drawings are in different colors. But this first one is in white because it represents what is called a Christophany. That means an appearance of Christ in human form before he actually entered this creation through physical birth. Also, the letters are outlined in a light brown, which are a foreshadowing of his birth in Bethlehem, man's body being formed out of the dust of the earth, and that birth coming in the fullness of time at the right time. Now, there are 2 picture inserts here. Of course, here's Joshua. This would be Moses at the burning bush, and this was Abraham when he was visited by Christ in a Christophany. God used 2 different men to lead the children of Israel out of slavery into Egypt into the promised land. One was Moses and the other was Joshua. In this scene, it's very possible that God was confirming to Joshua that he would be with him even as he had been with Moses. Both got the same order: remove the sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy. That happened to both Moses and to Joshua. Anytime we're confronted with God through encouragement or reproof or chastening, etc., we would be well advised to remove the sandals off our feet too, because we're on holy ground. Anytime God's dealing with us, it's actually holy ground. Now, Abraham and the 3 sojourners, or the 3 wanderers, if you want to put it that way, Matthew Henry's observed that Jesus appeared to the soldier, as a man of war with a sword drawn. But when he appeared to the wanderer Abraham, he appeared as a wanderer. Every true Christian knows that God does bow down from the heavens and often meets us at our level. Yet he never violates his holiness or his Godhead, and these are exhibitions of his mercy, his power, his wisdom, and his love. Now the sky here is red. This is right before they're going into the land of Canaan. And it's red because the sun is going down over a fertile land. Judgment was descending upon the inhabitants of the land of Canaan, and Joshua was the tool God had chosen to bring judgment upon these wicked people who were going to be spewed out of the land. And if you look, it's all very green, and there's roads going everywhere, and cities, and all kinds of fortifications. There's a fruitful land flowing with milk and honey. And yet, God was going to spew them out, and the Jews were to inherit it. Now, they were under orders to leave nothing alive that breathed, men, women, children, or livestock. It's an astounding thing, that kind of complete destruction. Then I write here, right now the entire world is under a sky of grace, but a bloodied sun is descending, the sky is red, and the second coming of Christ is going to come where he comes in judgment, and it's hastening upon the earth. And then I wrote, are you ready? You know, the song I did just before this is Jesus is a-coming. That might well be worth your time of not only listening to the song, but looking at the lyrics, because it talks about when he comes, some parts of how that's going to happen. Then as he arrives, some parts of what's going to happen, particularly the great white throne, and then what we can expect following the scenario of the great and terrible day of the Lord, and then what's on the other side. And then the last verse is called, do you really know him, or are you playing some kind of death game down here? That song would be well worth listening to, and then also the commentary I have on it, but mainly to look into this event that's coming, the second coming of Christ. It's going to be nothing but miracle upon miracle upon miracle upon miracle. And even in the commentary to that song, I talk about several things I left out of the song that's going to be part of that whole scenario. It's just an astounding amount of activity that God says he is going to do that is beyond anything that we're experiencing now, completely. Now, again, I have green land here, and this is the wilderness. This is where the children of Israel wandered for 40 years. The Jews were going to the promised land which flowed with milk and honey. They were leaving the desert where a little life could grow, just a few little old things here and there. In like manner, we are in a desert now where righteousness has no home, and we're heading to the promised land wherein dwelleth righteousness, where it's nothing but righteousness. Satan has already been cast out of heaven and thrown to the earth. So there is a place where righteousness even now dwells, and that's where we're heading. Evil has already been spewed out of that location. Praise God for that. Now the commander himself, he is the dread champion. Jeremiah 20:11. It's an amazing description of him. His belt buckle, it has 12 stones on it. That would represent the 12 tribes which he took under his wing and command when they were coming into the promised land. Oh, what a tremendous error to later reject him as commander and king in exchange for a Saul or even a David or a Solomon and all the rest. The eye of the flesh is short-sighted and stupid. But don't I often make the same exchange? Where stupidity abounds, please make changing grace abound. Not repeat blunders that we've done in the past. Now the Ancient of Days, if you notice also, he's white-haired. A true elder must be, quote, white-headed. Well-seen spiritual white hairs. There are no shortcuts to genuine maturity. A brother once told me that a person can be very spiritual, but that does not necessarily mean mature. You see, aggressive spirituality can occur the moment you're born again, but maturity can only come with time and experience. May God grant us both. The whole point of staying on this planet after you get saved for any length of time is to continue to be growing in the things of God, the knowledge of God, the discernment of God, and to be changed by our experiences where we become more and more Christ-like. We're either going to grow one direction or the other. We're either going to be pursuing God and growing in the things of righteousness and having our senses trained to discern good and evil. It's a word for gymnastics. We're either going to be engaged in that, or you don't just float along, you float down to your sin nature. And it's much easier to go that direction than be pursuing God on a consistent basis. But that's what we need to do, and you're either going to get more and more wise and more understanding and more knowledge, or you're going to get dumber and dumber spiritually. And those are very dangerous waters because you cannot be guaranteed that everything's going to be okay when it's all said and done. Doesn't matter what profession of faith you've made. We got to keep growing and pursuing and persevering to the end. Now, if you also notice, the commander of the Lord's army, he has his back turned toward the Canaanites. Does that mean he does not know what they're doing? One group says, God doesn't see. Another group will say, God doesn't care. A third group says, I'm doing okay. Look how I'm prospering. I must be on his good side. Well, to the first group, says he doesn't see, God says he watches all the paths of men, the good and the evil. He tells the second group that he's kept a record of every deed, word, and thought they've ever had. Who cares about you that much that they keep track of every detail you've ever done? All of us have a book. When we get saved, that book or certificate of debt was placed on Jesus Christ on the cross, and it's paid for the wickedness of it. But everyone else at the great white throne, the books were opened, and every thought, every deed, every word, it's all there. Who cares that much about you? Only God to keep track of every single detail. He says even the secrets of our hearts are going to be exposed in that day. And the third group is saying, I must be okay on his good side because I'm prospering. He says, because I kept silent. You thought that I was just like you, but they judge wrongly. God is not a nagging mother wagging his finger at men and women. I also completely reject the posture of Jesus being brokenhearted over all of us that don't turn to him and come to him. And he's reaching his arms out, and he's a rejected lover. That is not the God of the Bible. The inhabitants of the land of Canaan had turned their back on God, and as a judgment, he then turned his back towards them. If he's not wanted, he leaves. Remember the Gerasene demoniac? People were terrified, wanted him gone. He got in the boat and left. So he might leave, but he does return. And when he does, he comes with a righteous sword. Don't make the mistake of creating an Old Testament God and a New Testament God. There's one God. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Everyone that pushes him away can succeed in that effort for a season, but do not be fooled. He will come back. Father, grant to my readers, or my listeners, your saving grace, so they might seek the dread champion's face. Grant them the gift of your pardoning mercy from the commander of the Lord's army. Christianity is not a religion. It's a relationship and commitment to a person, the person of Christ. And even though we've known him according to the flesh, we know him thus no longer. When the Apostle John was on the island of Patmos and wrote the Revelation, when he saw Jesus in that revelation, the one he had been with for 3 years, the one he saw raised from the dead, the one he was with on several occasions over a 40-day period and watched him ascend into heaven, when he saw the Christ as he is now, John fell at his feet like a dead man. And the commander of the Lord's army had to put his hand on him and say, "Do not be afraid." When you call on him, he does become your shepherd, and he's a good shepherd. But he does have a rod or a staff that is used to alternately guide and sometimes correct us who are straying from his agenda and his desires and designs for our life. And for the world that rejects him, this is the only Jesus they're going to see. I hope you've gained something worthwhile from this drawing I made that's exactly twice the size of what an album cover was in the day when they did album covers. Well, I want to thank you for listening. Like I always say, well, get into the Bible, and you're going to learn great and mighty things that you do not know. And the material, if you will receive it, it leads and can only lead to life, and you will indeed live.